So, um, first of all, I'd like to thank Terry and all the organizers for hosting this important session on energy storage technologies. For people who don't know me, I'm Dr. Rahul Walawalkar. I'm the founder and president of India Energy Storage Alliance, as well as president of Customized Energy Solutions India Private Limited. And we have a very interesting panel with us where we are going to focus mainly about some of the alternative energy storage technologies. We are not going to focus as much on the batteries, although in the initial overview presentation, I'll try to set the stage where I'll cover all technologies. But in the rest of the panel, we will be focusing mainly on some of the long duration technologies, non-electrochemical technologies, which can have an impact for supporting renewable integration. So just as a background, as I mentioned, I'm president for India Operations for Customized Energy Solutions. It's a global company headquartered in US in Philadelphia. We are a consulting and services company. We have more than 15 years experience of working across the complete range of energy storage technologies. And we also manage a large portfolio of renewables as well as demand response technologies in electricity markets with a total portfolio of more than 13 gigawatt. And we also manage close to 1 gigawatt hour of energy storage facilities, which are also dispatched in various electricity markets around the globe. Also, India Energy Storage Alliance was created in 2012 with the objective of creating awareness about energy storage and e-mobility technologies in India. In 2016, we upgraded our mission to make India a global hub for R&D, manufacturing, and adoption of advanced energy storage technologies. So you can see now IESA has grown to more than 150 members spanning all forms of technologies and not just technology providers, but also independent power producers, investors, R&D entities, startups, various other associations. So we have a very vibrant ecosystem which has been created to accelerate energy storage adoption in India through IESA. So now coming to the topic, when I look at as IESA energy storage technologies, we look at it as a complete spectrum. So there are a range of electrochemical batteries which are driving the e-mobility boom. And in fact, over next decade, it is expected that maybe the e-mobility deployment of energy storage may overtake stationary energy storage, but we'll have to see. There are a lot of opportunities, especially with the recent improved commitments for renewable penetration moving to net zero. In fact, even stationary storage in coming decade may also see a huge advances. So it's going to be a good race. And the way I think of it is it's not a race as a one technology winning other or one application winning over other, but it's a relay race where both e-mobility as well as stationary storage can enable us for achieving some of the climate goals, what we are setting together for addressing climate issues. Now, within technologies, apart from electrochemical technologies, where we have lead acid batteries, lithium ion batteries, flow batteries like vanadium redox, we have metal air batteries emerging, solid state batteries, and there are in fact other mechanical systems such as flywheels, compressed air energy storage, pumped hydro has been a long-term solution which has been available for more than a century and in fact has a largest deployment. But traditional pumped hydro facilities had certain limitations related to the environment, related to the siting, and many new approaches are being seen to remove that. And Robin will be sharing one such approach later during his presentation. There are also thermal storage technologies available which can be used not just in form of electricity storage, but it can also be used for storing process heat or process cold, and it can help improve efficiency for industrial and commercial applications quite a lot. Over the last 2-3 years, we are getting a lot of revived interest on hydrogen, which is form of a chemical storage where electrolyzers can be used for generating green hydrogen, and then either you can use fuel cells for converting it back into the electricity, or you can directly use the green hydrogen for reducing carbon intensity of various industrial and commercial applications. There are also pure electrical energy storage technologies like ultra capacitors or superconducting magnetic energy storage. And for most of these storage technologies, which are DC in nature, you need power electronics to either use the energy from the grid to charge or feed back the energy into the grid from DC sources such as solar energy. Here is a landscape in terms of how different storage technologies compete with each other, or which are the sizes in terms of both power as well as energy different storage technologies can be used. So the traditional pumped hydro, which I mentioned, is already deployed at more than 1,000 gigawatt or hundreds of gigawatt hour scale. Is available mainly where we are looking at 100 megawatt and above kind of a scale, and looking for 6 hour, 8 hour, or even multiple day kind of a storage. On the other hand side, when you get to the kilowatt hour storage side, mainly you are looking for electrochemical storage technologies. And within that, with the technology improvements, you are seeing a lot of changes happening where, for example, now with reducing costs, flow batteries have been sized for 4 hour or smaller, which earlier were sized mainly for 6 hour or 10 hour kind of application. Whereas with lithium-ion batteries and their reducing prices, we are seeing now lithium-ion batteries being used not just for less than 1 hour, but even like 2 to 4 hour and possibly even longer duration. So there is a healthy competition across all these technologies, and you need to not just focus on the power and energy or capital cost, which a lot of people get very fixated on. You need to look at when you are selecting technologies for right application. There are range of other parameters such as energy density, power density, thermal safety, round trip efficiency, capital cost, complexity of the management or the controllability of the storage device, the cycle life, which determines ultimately how long you have before you have to replace the technology, and certain aspects such as self-discharge. So these are all 7, 8 parameters, and there are many more. So depending on your applications, you may replace some of these parameters with other parameters, and no one technology is going to be able to meet or perform ideally on all parameters. But it doesn't matter, because for different applications, not all parameters are very important. So, and that's where it is exciting, where we feel that it's not that entire market is going to be dominated by just one single technology. We think there is enough opportunities for multiple technologies to play a key role and prosper together. Now, coming to alternative technologies, here is one form, which is sort of, you can call it as a thermal battery, where you are using excess electricity to convert electricity into heat using a heat pump. And you can store it in a different medium where you can store both hot and coldness. And then you again use it for reconverting it back with a heat engine for electricity when you want. So instead of converting electricity into a electrochemical process, you are storing it in a thermal process and then again reusing it for generating electricity. The another approach which is being taken, which builds on the basics or fundamentals of the pumped hydro system, is called gravity storage, where you are either stacking cylinders, as in the case of Energy Vault, where you have a crane which is building this sort of a big towers with various concrete blocks, and you can move the rocks or the concrete blocks up and down to try to either store the energy or release the energy. There are similar approaches being tried in US in form of using rail or using sort of pulley mechanism on a cliff, where you can use similar concepts by moving these concrete blocks up and down using sort of a rail technology. So a lot of these approaches are in still early commercialization stage. So we have to wait and see which approaches will succeed. But it's not only for these technologies. I think in terms of pumped hydro technologies, the traditional challenge for pumped hydro is to find out the two geological locations, one up high on the mountain and one on the ground level, where you need to have both storage facilities of sufficient quantity, but people have looked at using underground pumped hydro, particularly using old mines, where typically metal mines are ideally suited. But some people are even looking at coal or other mines, although I have some concerns where because of I think contamination or other aspects you need to be very, very careful about. But if these are like metal mines, then typically those can be very well sealed and there may be less issues related to the water contamination or other aspects. But these are something which are approaches which are being tried about, and we'll see if this technology can supplement the traditional pumped hydro technology. There are other forms where rather than using sort of mines, you can use shafts and you can use weights and or piston to try to use it. And again, I won't get into detail because Robin, I'm sure, will have probably much more information and more accurate information than the graphics what I'm using to show. But I just wanted to educate and highlight that there is not just one approach or one technology available. I think there are lots of bright minds who are working on range of technologies which can all meet the challenges which are being generated by our desire to decarbonize the grid, decarbonize the industrial sector. And energy storage, without energy storage, I think we are not going to get the kind of flexibility what we need. So this is really an exciting time. And if you can see this map from US Department of Energy, again, this is slightly outdated map, almost a year old. And also it doesn't include all the projects because this is a data which is mainly compiled by Sandia National Laboratories. So some of the regions like Asia and others are not very well represented. But anyway, it gives you idea that if you particularly have watched this map over the years, how rapidly this world is evolving and how there are certain hotspots which are emerging where a lot of storage projects are taking place. And places like even Australia, where in terms of the load, it is not significant, but still I think people are finding opportunities for deploying large amount of storage. And I'm pretty sure China, India is going to emerge amongst the top three destinations for energy storage in the coming decade. Now, in terms of looking for energy storage and renewables, one clear aspect is for balancing renewables. But this is area where sometimes I think renewable developers itself have in a short-sightedness tried to downplay the importance or need of storage because there was for last decade sort of a race to the bottom in terms of looking for the lowest cost renewable energy. And again, when renewable energy was less than 5% or even less than 10% of the grid mix, it did not matter as much. Yes, you can get cheaper energy. That was a priority because when all these things started, solar energy was costing almost 30 cents or even higher. And you cannot have a very significant deployment at those prices. So the focus was on reducing prices for solar and wind energy. But as now that is happening and solar and wind is becoming cheapest energy, now the dispatchability of these renewable resources is important. And sometimes people say that, oh, solution is easy. You just place them geographically, and that creates enough diversity because wind is not blowing in all over the places at the same time. Or you can look at mixing solar and wind, and that should solve the problem because wind is blowing at night, sun is shining during the day. So that is a perfect solution. But hypothetically, that is right. But practically, when you're looking at managing grid on a second by second basis or even 10-minute, 15-minute blocks, you start seeing that there are certain times, particularly morning hours, where both wind and solar will be available. Whereas in the evening time, where typically most of the grids face the highest peak load, neither sun is available nor enough wind is available. So just adding wind and solar is not going to be able to allow us to run the world with net zero energy. Now, the solution many people think is, oh, but we already have all these existing thermal assets. So why don't we just use thermal assets wherever wind or sun is not available? And technically, they are absolutely right. You can very well do that. But there, then the question is like, why are we adding all these renewables? If the goal is the environmental goal and not just looking at the cheapest energy source, then mixing renewables and thermal makes no sense. And there are many studies which have been done over last decade around the globe, which shows that especially if you are trying to rely on coal, maybe gas is a better solution. But unfortunately, in places like India, gas is almost non-existent. So you are looking at mainly balancing thermal power in terms of coal energy for balancing renewable. And that makes no sense because when you're operating these thermal assets in a part load condition, particularly going below 50% PLF, you start getting a situation where you lose significant amount of SOx and NOx emissions. And especially in India, where some of the particulate emission control and other mechanisms are not yet enforced, I think we are getting into a nightmarish situation where already India has a distinction of hosting 19 out of 20 most polluted cities. So we cannot afford to rely on these thermal assets for this. And better solution is already available in terms of integrating storage with these renewables, where you can have higher round trip efficiency, you can have much lower operating cost, and the levelized cost of renewables plus storage is coming down so rapidly that it can easily displace any peaker unit, but possibly even intermediate and baseload units in the coming decade. So here are some of the price data in terms of the prices for looking at storage and storage. And one thing what people need to realize is that it is not just one parameter. You are just not looking for the cheapest energy storage technology to reduce this, but there are many parameters such as your charge discharge rate, round trip efficiency, the cycle life, depth of discharge. All those parameters are important to estimate how what is the levelized cost of such renewable plus storage system. But one thing which is undeniable and very clear is that the cost is coming down, and it is already becoming a very good option for especially commercial industrial customers who are paying much higher tariffs, especially in India, as compared to some of the other segments. So we as a CES have been working on these type of projects for more than a decade now. We have worked with more than 200 projects on sizing storage and renewables. So using that, we have developed this platform called Comets, which can be used for evaluating which technology to use, how to size the technology, how do you plan for any replacements if required, or how do you evaluate two different technologies where one technology may have, say, 25, 30 year of life, as in case of some of the pumped hydro or other mechanical systems, and other system where you have 5 year, 7 year life with multiple replacement cycles. So these type of tools can be used for evaluating and making sure that you make a right investment decision. The other area where I think storage is being now seen as an important asset is for cleaning up the peak. And this is a work which we did for state of Massachusetts in US, where we did a system level analysis and demonstrated that typically with more renewables coming in, overall grid is getting cleaner. But still, because of reliance on the traditional fossil fuel resources, the peak period was sort of the dirtiest period. And based on that, there was a clean peak standard passed for creating incentives for using storage and other technologies for reducing the carbon intensity and emissions during the peak time period. So those type of approaches also needs to be tried. And especially if you're looking for 4 to 6 hour kind of a peak, then RE plus storage is already a great solution. Now, there are a lot of policy work which is happening over the years in this area. And again, as I mentioned earlier, IESA was launched in 2012. Since then, we have been part of various government committees, and we have been pushing for step-by-step improvements in the removing barriers and enabling markets. So in India, already hybrid projects are considered as renewable projects. There is a RE plus storage hybrid policy already released by MNRE, as well as it is approved by Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. Such hybrid projects can be done as a greenfield project, or you can even look at a existing wind or solar project, and you can go in and add storage and make it a hybrid project. We have a National Energy Storage Mission, which has been drafted by MNRE, and that is now integrated with National Mission for Transformative Mobility by NITI Aayog. And together it has created a huge opportunity for setting up manufacturing in India. Over last year, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and NITI Aayog has been also working on National Hydrogen Mission. And we feel that green hydrogen will create actually more opportunities for deployment of both renewables as well as storage, and create more opportunities rather than it being a competition with the existing storage technologies. So overall, even without considering some of the recent announcements made at COP26, this is the results from our annual report. I am right now showing here market data or market projections from our last year's report, where as a base case, we are considering somewhere around 400 to 500 gigawatt hour of energy storage deployment across stationary and e-mobility. And in a best case scenario, this demand can be more than 700 gigawatt hour between 2020 to 2027. And we are right now updating this and coming up with a scenario for going through 2030. But if anyone is interested in these reports, you can drop me a mail separately, and I'll be happy to connect you with my colleagues who have authored these reports. I mentioned earlier that one of the reason why the prices are coming down is also the scaling up of manufacturing. And this is the area where IESA since 2016 has been working on creating a policy framework for enabling advanced manufacturing in India. And as part of that, already there is a mission launch for battery technologies, but we hope that in the coming years, other technologies, if they decide to set up manufacturing in India, we as IESA as well as many government agencies will be willing to support those technologies as well. But for batteries, already there is a 50 gigawatt hour battery manufacturing mission, which is announced, where the cabinet approval came in May earlier this year. By October, the actual RFP was released, and current deadline for submitting the bids is end of December, but it may get extended by a month based on some of the requests from many of the leading companies. But by March, this selection process should be over. And between June 22 to June 24, these gigafactories will start getting constructed. So we do expect that the market demand is going to keep on growing up very rapidly, where the 50 gigawatt hour by 2027, that's actually a very appropriate time. Our base case scenario suggests that the market demand by 2027 will be at least 60 gigawatt hour. I think the timing for this gigafactory mission is perfect, but we don't want to stop at 50 gigawatt hour. We think in India by 2030, we are going to need more than 150 gigawatt hour of storage. And again, it is not just in terms of batteries, it could be other forms of storage technologies as well. So we want to make sure that we don't just stop at building 50 gigawatt hour of battery technologies, but look at all forms of technologies and support those technologies to get to more than 100 gigawatt hour manufacturing by 2030. And we want to continue to build on that to get to 500 gigawatt hour manufacturing capability by 2035. We are looking at supporting various startups already under IESA. We have more than 25 startup members, and we have partnerships with many government ministries as well as other private incubators where we are together supporting it. Next year in February, we are launching an accelerator program where we ourselves will be taking an active role in grooming some of the next generation startups. We are also addressing the skill development gap related to this emerging area, because right now the kind of interest and opportunities which are coming up, it is not matched by the skill development. Many of the existing universities and programs are not capable, or they are not right now equipped for providing the right kind of a training for this. So we are looking at partnering with many other associations or even academic institutions for addressing that skill gap. We also have created our own magazine, Emerging Technology News, for creating awareness. There are various knowledge papers which are released throughout the year. There is a podcast available for free for people who want to stay informed about these opportunities. And there are also commercial reports available in terms of either market overview report or technology assessment reports, which can be purchased or which can be included with a higher level membership of IESA. So to conclude, I would say that over the last 5 years, the energy storage and e-mobility policies have evolved quite rapidly in India. Overall, energy storage sector has shown similar learning curve for cost reduction as it is exhibited by solar industry. There are a range of technologies where the performance improvement is happening, cost reduction is happening, and pumped hydro, traditional pumped hydro, although it is proven, it is limited because of the various environmental or geographical limitations. So we need to look beyond just the traditional approaches. And both electrochemical batteries as well as thermal gravity storage solutions have a lot of opportunities in the coming decade, as especially we start looking for longer duration storage technologies and solutions. But it is very important that we don't get fixated just by the technology, because understanding application requirement is very essential for choosing the right technology and then operating it in a optimal fashion to get returns, which is again going to be important for driving more investment in this sector. And cost reduction is not going to happen just on the manufacturing side. You need to learn how to size the technologies, how to operate this technology so that you can get better value from the assets which are getting built. And there is a tremendous opportunity for collaboration, and we are here to support the industry. And we thank Terry and other partners for helping us spread the word. So with that, I would like to end my opening remarks, and let me invite my co-panelists for sharing their views. So without further delay, I would like to invite Robin and Robin Len to share his insights about Gravity City and some of the innovative work which they are doing, which would be very interesting for India. So Robin, handing it over to you.
Thank you, Rahul. And let's see if we can Can you see that? For some reason I've gone mute. Can anybody hear me? Rahul, I can't hear you. Can you see that? Rahul, I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Sorry, I think the organizers were muting me, so or we are trying to unmute myself simultaneously, I guess. So no,
Okay.
We can see the screen and we can hear you well. So
you can see the screen. Okay, excellent. Okay. So thank you for inviting me to be on. It's great to be here. I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about the Gravitricity technology and what we're looking to do. We're a low carbon innovative company based in the UK, more specifically in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we're looking to develop an energy storage technology which has its own very specific features based on gravity. So just to give you an overview of that technology, it's basically divided into two different sort of component categories: the components which exist above ground and those which exist below ground. We're looking essentially to lift a weight to the top of a mine shaft and then drop it back down again, and the dropping back down again is obviously what generates the electricity. And so at a component level, what that system requires is a mine shaft of a particular depth and diameter to get a weight in there of a sufficient mass to drive the energy generation. The cables will need to be connecting the weight itself to the top of the mine, and at the top of the mine itself there is heavy lift equipment and then generators as well, and it's the cables pulling through the generators which generates the electricity. It's a terribly simple concept in its essence. It's obviously based on the same principles that you get in pumped hydro. Gravity storage is not a new thing, and it's not something which is novel, and the principles are pretty well known. It's a new application of gravity energy storage, and so, as we like to say, there's new engineering. It's essentially a multidisciplinary engineering challenge and a challenge of integration, but there's no new science here. It's essentially the same science, we like to say, that you find in a grandfather clock as well. And so we're like hydro, but we don't need mountains and we don't need water, so we're much more location independent and more flexible in terms of where we can locate ourselves. The shaft itself, I should say, before we go on, the shaft itself can be an existing mine shaft, so we can look to repurpose a coal mine or some other kind of mine which has been decommissioned as a mine. But in the future, we will absolutely be looking also to dig our own shafts into the ground, and that gives us the flexibility to configure the dimensions of the mine to suit our own purposes, as opposed to taking over that from decisions which other people have made. In terms of our mission as a company, we're looking to deploy what we see is a world of distributed generation requiring a world of distributed storage, and it's very much facilitating the distribution of that storage around the world. The democratization of energy and the low carbon transition. These are all things which are very dear to us as a team, and it is very much a global thing. We're a company which is based in Scotland, but we feel we have a technology which has applicability in different parts of the world, in the developing world, in the developed world, and in all sorts of different use cases, which we'll get to in a minute. So it's very much a global mission that we have. To give you a little bit of an overview of Gravitricity and what we've done so far, we really sort of got going in 2018, and in that time we have raised nearly 5 million UK pounds worth of funding, and that's through a combination of equity funding and R&D grants. That actually is that 1 million figure at the top there is out of date. We're shortly going to be announcing quite significant new grant funding from UK government to progress our technologies. So that's a very exciting thing for us, and yeah, so watch the space on those announcements. But so on the equity side, we've raised quite a lot of money as well. We've filed 7 patents in all, and 4 of those have been granted, and 3 of them are still pending, and we're currently looking at filing them elsewhere in the world as well, in different jurisdictions, including India. We have worked with Imperial College London on the development of levelized cost of storage reports, which they've done 2 independent studies on different product variants that we have developed, and have concluded that over a 25-year period, given certain assumptions, our technology has a lower levelized cost of storage than any of the competing technologies that were also profiled as part of this study. And we can talk more about that later on as well. And we've also developed a concept demonstrator that was up and visible up in Edinburgh earlier in the year. It was a 250 kilowatt system, so not a big system by any means, and it was the first and only time we will ever build a system which was above ground. It was really for the purposes of technology testing and validation that we built it, and it was highly successful in many different respects. We demonstrated that we can respond in less than a second to grid signals, and that's a very important capability to have when you're looking to revenue stack and provide different ancillary services, as they're called in the UK, to the grid. We also demonstrated that we could operate a multi-weight system and provide continuous energy to the grid by synchronizing the deceleration of weight 1 as it's coming to the bottom of the shaft with the acceleration of an adjacent weight, and synchronizing those 2 to make sure that you've got a continuous power export to the grid. Now, I'm going to try and show you a quick video, which only is a minute long, but hopefully should work. And I'm going to assume that this works unless somebody tells me otherwise.
Yeah, Robin, we can see, we are just not able to hear any audio, but we can see the video.
Okay.
You can provide the commentary on what is being shown.
Yeah, so there you've got 2 weights going down at the same time. It was quite a modest height. It was only 15 meters high. And so that facility was actually up earlier in the year and doing the testing, and we actually wanted to keep it up for the purposes of the recent COP event, which happened just down the road in Glasgow, which is about 30-40 miles away. And we did want to relocate this system and actually relocate it to Glasgow, but that didn't prove possible in the end, which was a bit of a shame. In terms of looking forward, we are looking between 2021 and 2024 to develop our first full-scale deployment, and we're looking at potential sites in Eastern Europe for that, potentially in the Czech Republic or Poland. That will be a 4 megawatt, 1 megawatt hour system, so relatively short duration system, which will be deployed to provide balancing services and and ancillary services to the local grid. And one of the other things we're looking to do over the course of 2022 is a key priority for us is to raise a second tranche of a Series A funding of between 6 and 10 million pounds. So people talk a lot about energy storage and the way the requirements of the market are going to evolve over time. And we have our own perspective on this. Very simplistically, we see certainly in the UK and in Europe, very strong demand now for relatively short duration, high power services, so up to 2 hours. 2 to 6 hours is there is a certain level of demand for services in this region now, but we also see that the demand in this area will continue to increase throughout the 2020s, and before long, I think will outweigh the 0 to 2 hour area of the market in terms of overall capacity. And the 6 to 12, the longer duration stuff, will also continue to increase modestly, I think, at first to perhaps to 2025 and 2030, but we see it increasing significantly beyond 2030. And we are developing 3 different product variants which address each one of those 3 market needs. So we have a single weight system, which is relatively short duration and high power, which is to address the 0 to 2 hour market. We are developing a multi-weight system for the 2 to 6 hour duration, and we're also developing a single weight system which would also incorporate hydrogen store within the shaft itself, which can the single weight can obviously provide the 0 to 2 hour services, and the hydrogen can help with peak shaving and longer duration services. So to give you a little bit of an idea of how we see ourselves fitting in with other technologies, people talk a lot about lithium ion, and people often actually compare us with lithium ion and pumped hydro. And pumped hydro actually operates in a completely different area of the market to us. They're longer duration, they're higher power. But nonetheless, we've taken the opportunity to compare how we see our technology comparing with these two. So if we look at lithium ion first, its lifetime is very, very poor. It needs a wholesale replacement after 10 or 12 years, depending on the amount of time it's been cycled. So it doesn't perform well on that criteria at all. Its round trip efficiency is extremely high. It's sort of 80-85%, but it's down at the bottom again in terms of its degradation. You lose a lot of the performance from day one. By the time you get to year 8, year 9, year 10, you're getting a much less efficient system. It's also not very good on parasitic loads. It requires an air conditioning system to keep it from catching fire often, and so that's obviously a drain on the charge of the system as well. And the other thing that people don't really talk about with lithium ion is the end of life costs. It's sort of an unspoken subject, we feel, on lithium ion, but it is going to present a problem, and the decommissioning and the challenge of disposing of the technology in an environmentally responsible way is going to create a different category of costs, and that's something which we feel that there's not a lot of awareness right now, but it's going to carry on increasing in importance. They obviously do very well in terms of location flexibility. It's a highly flexible system. It can be located anywhere, and it's also very good on speed of response. So that's lithium ion. We go through the same thing with pumped hydro. It's obviously does very well on lifetime. The components can carry on being replaced, and there's no sort of obvious end of life for them. doesn't do so well on round trip efficiency. It's sort of 65, 70%, so not nearly as good as lithium ion. And non-degradation in performance, again, it's very high on that. Its standing loss is very high. That water can stand at the top of the passageway or up the mountain as long as you like, and it won't lose any of the potential energy it's got there. And its end of life cost is very good. It falls down a lot on flexibility of location, because you do need certain geographical characteristics to make it work, and it's not so good on speed of response as well. So you can see how pumped hydro and lithium ion are in many respects sort of diametrically opposite. They perform in completely different ways and have different performance characteristics. And now if you just do run through the same process on gravitricity, we're very good on lifetime, the same as pumped hydro. Really, there's no reason why we can't just carry on going and going. We're good on round trip efficiency, perhaps not as good as lithium ion, so we're sort of around the sort of 75-80% mark there, and we're also very good on not losing any of that performance over the course of that lifetime. We're also very good on standing losses. That weight can stand at the top of the shaft for pretty much forever, and it won't lose any of that potential energy, and good end life costs. Not so good on location flexibility. The nuance there is that when we're looking to locate one of these systems in an existing shaft, we obviously have to go where there is an existing shaft, but where we're looking to locate in a new shaft, we do have a greater level of flexibility. And as I said, we can respond to grid signals in under a second, so we do well on that. So we like to think that we do have characteristics that draw upon some of the best areas of lithium ion and also of pumped hydro. And what that equates to, I won't go into the slide in much detail. The stuff on the left is kind of what we've gone through already. But just to say that the graph on the right is a screenshot from one of the reports I mentioned earlier, which demonstrates that our levelized cost of storage over a 25-year period is significantly lower than any of the other technologies that were profiled as part of this study. We see ourselves operating in 4 different use cases. Balancing service is the one I've alluded to first, and we expect that our initial deployments will be offering ancillary services, grid services, fast frequency response services to the grid. But we see ourselves doing much more than that, and we also see a lot of value for co-locating our facilities with solar. Supporting industrial decarbonisation, which so think sort of large off-grid industrial operations which are looking to wean themselves off their diesel gensets. They could be mines, and there's obviously a fit with what we're looking to do if they do happen to be mine operations, but they don't have to be mine operations. They could be any sort of off-grid operations. And fourthly, and very importantly for us, is the combining of our system with mini grids to provide or help to provide more 24/7 power services to remote communities. I won't spend long on this slide, and we don't need to sort of cover off all the text on the left or on the right, but just to say that we see ourselves as a technology provider to the EPC. So we're down the bottom there. We don't see ourselves as a project developer or getting involved to that extent in particular energy storage projects. We see ourselves as performing a technology provision service to the EPC who's being hired to actually build out the facility. And so we would provide IP licenses, we provide hardware and equipment, and perhaps an O&M contract as well as part of that. Geographically, we see ourselves as very diverse, and we've got a number of different, the fact that we've got use cases across 4 different categories means that we are specifically looking at particular geographies, and the ones that we've dark shaded here, I guess tick one or more of the criteria that we've used to assess them. We've also happily in many cases we've got either undertaken studies or are about to undertake studies to assess the feasibility of our technology in particular locations. And in relation to India, we've recently won some funding to undertake a feasibility study with a consultancy based in India who have knowledge of the Indian market. So that's something which actually will be kicking off in the next fortnight or so, at the beginning of December. And so that's all I wanted to say. Happy to take any questions either now or at the end of the event.
Thanks very much, Robin. Get started with question. I think Abhinav from Solar Energy Corporation, he was going to talk about underground pumped hydro facilities, but I think he's stuck with some meeting and not able to join. So let's, I think, have a chat between you and me, and then we can close. I'm also requesting audience members to send any messages on chat, or if there is someone from the organizers, they can send me messages on WhatsApp, and I'll be happy to pose those to Robin or answer if there is any question for me. So Robin, it is interesting to see actually some of the systems, what you have done on the pilot basis. So how far are you, and what is the ideal size for a system for you? Are you looking at straight away going for megawatt scale deployments, or will you be looking at some of the initial deployments at a smaller size, or can you share about your commercialization roadmap?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. And so I think the answers depend on whether we're talking about a single weight system or a multi-weight system, and the different ways in which they fit into different market segments. So the single weight system we see as a high power, short duration type service, and the one we're looking to deploy in Eastern Europe at the moment, in the Czech Republic or Poland, that we expect to be a 4 megawatt, 1 megawatt hour system. And so only 15 minutes of duration, and it may be that in time we upscale that to double that, so it's 8 and 2. But you get the idea that it's that single weight systems we see as offering service over a quite short duration, high power services. And so that's that system. The multi-weight system is fundamentally different, because it has the ability to drop a weight, and as that weight is decelerating towards the bottom of the mine, it would be picking up another one and starting the same thing over, and there's no reason why that can't happen 10, 15, 20 times. Really, the only limitation is not the number of weights you've got at the top, but it's more about doing it so many times that you're running out of space, and you've lost some of the drop in the mine shaft because it's all kind of filled out with weights at the bottom. So that's the limitation there. But if you've got a very deep mine, that only becomes an issue once you've dropped quite a few weights down there. So we've profiled and modeled a system which is 10 megawatts and 24 megawatt hours for the multi-weight system, but we also believe we can go much higher than that, and some of the funding that I mentioned that we're going to be able to announce soon will further develop the multi-weight system.
Your ideal duration is like less than 2 hours. I noticed your first system was half an hour or 15 minutes, and right now you talked about 2 hours. So you are basically trying to focus on those like smaller duration.
So I think certainly the multi-weight system can the one I mentioned just now is a 2.5 hour system, but we can certainly go to 5 or 6 hours using that multi-weight system, and potentially beyond. Our third product iteration, which I mentioned briefly, was the single weight system with the hydrogen store as well. And once you start talking about the ability to store hydrogen in these shafts underground, then obviously your ability to provide much longer duration services increases.
Okay, great. And in terms of your India plans, you mentioned about a project which you are kickstarting. Can you share some details on that?
Yeah, so it's a study that we're undertaking with an Indian consultancy called Panitech, and we are looking to we're looking to do some work which they're fundamentally going to be leading on, to assess the viability of the Gravitricity technology in the Indian market, how it could fit in, what what challenges we might face in fitting in the regulatory landscape there, and how we can blend that knowledge and information and insight about the Indian market back into a product development roadmap, so we can make sure that we're in our product development and our engineering, we're developing and keeping an eye on the requirements of the Indian market. So it's a 3-month piece of work which will complete it within Q1 next year. We're very much looking forward to getting the insights from that, and then further assessing where we take that next in terms of providing deployments in the Indian subcontinent.
Great. Yeah. Again, sorry to hear about it so late. I would have loved to actually help you on that. As I mentioned in my presentation, we have done similar work for range of technologies around the globe. So in fact, in the energy storage especially work, I think probably we have the highest amount of work and knowledge, especially when it comes to the India. So hopefully after this study is done, if you decide to continue working in India, I would love to see how we can support you.
I'd like that very much. We should definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, and also I think you can get involved with ISA, because in fact, especially if your study will be over in 3 months, then in February, India Energy Storage Alliance will be hosting a full week of activities called India Energy Storage Week during the week of 13th of February. So that could be a good opportunity for you to come in and share the results of that work. We'll be shortly issuing the call for abstracts. So look forward to you presenting there.
For sure. Yeah, that would be good.
I have lost your video. I'm not sure if it is a problem on my side or.
I'm going to turn off my video because there seems to be some bandwidth issues. I don't know whether it's your side or my side, but I'm going to turn off my video.
Okay. As long as you're
hopefully
there,
we can carry on talking. Yeah, I'm still here.
So the other question I have is that in terms of, I think you showed a chart which talked about how you will work with the other EPC players and other things. So are you open at in terms of licensing your technology, or do you see a very active role, or what is your sort of a roadmap for say next 5 years? Because I think for some of these areas you could have opportunities. I think you showed the global map across the different regions. So how do you see that technology adoption going forward? Because as you are taking more time, more and more technologies are getting commercialized, and the competition will keep on increasing. So how do you see that?
Yeah, so we see ourselves as progressing with the technology development in-house to the time when it is commercially viable, which we expect that it will be in the next a couple of years. And then our business model would be to license it. So we're not looking to license the development of the technology, if that makes sense. But once it is commercially viable, that's absolutely what we're looking to do. We're looking to license it to providers and project developers and energy storage developers in specific markets, and potentially exclusively or on a non-exclusive basis, depending on how those commercial discussions work. But that would be our model. It would be to provide our technology on a license fee basis, and provide the kits that would be required, the equipment, the heavy lift equipment, the power electronics, the cables. All of that would need to be very carefully specified by us to make sure that it's going to work as it should.
Okay, great. So I've received a couple of questions on my WhatsApp chat from the organizers. How do you see, like, are there any economies of scale or synergies with other approaches, like what Energy Vault or few of the others are doing? Is there something which you can leverage with other gravity-based technologies?
I'm not aware of any synergies with other gravity-based technologies. I mean, I was talking to some people yesterday, and they were wondering whether we could deploy our system within a mountainside, which was already set up to do pumped hydro. But I'm not sure. I'm I'm not sure I see the advantage of doing that, because you'd still have to dig a very large and significant hole in the ground, whether it's in a mountainside or elsewhere. I should say that we are looking at product iterations at an earlier stage, which look at developing sort of storage on a hillside, so in an open cast mine setting using train tracks and sort of carriages. So that's a product iteration that we are absolutely looking at. But yeah, I'm not sure I see the play with other forms of gravity storage. What we are looking to do is to provide more services using the mine shafts and the shafts that we're going to be using for the energy storage, for providing interseasonal heat. That wasn't something I talked about in my brief exposition, but it's something we're looking at doing alongside the hydrogen to provide another sort of tier of services to provide interseasonal heat, to provide heat services to particularly to Northern Europe in cold winter months.
So let me rephrase my question. So what I meant was that in terms of some of the components required for your project,
Okay.
like is there any synergy in terms of some of the other gravity-based technologies, the systems, what they are using in terms of just technology commercialization, or ultimately like bringing down the cost of the technology? Or do you think already many of the components what you'll be using are commercially available and you don't need a separate development?
It's an interesting question, and I think one of the things that we benefit from is having a relatively simple technology which essentially incorporates a combination of heavy lift equipment, which is an understood technology which is used, for example, in ports around the world to lift big containers off ships, cables which are used in all sorts of contexts, generators the same. And the weights themselves and the shaft. So none of our at the component level, none of our components are particularly innovative or new or different. There's a lot of clever engineering which goes behind that. So, for example, we've got a very sort of well thought out balancing system for making sure that the cables are let down at an even rate, so you ensure that your weights don't sort of bash the side of the wall of the mine, because given the weights, the massive weights that we're talking about, that would bring the mine down on itself very quickly. So we've got some clever technology around that balancing mechanism. We've also got some clever technology to make sure that when the weights are falling down, that obviously the weight would be falling down relatively slowly. When you don't think that our weights would be falling down particularly fast into the mine shaft. They would be falling down slowly, but we're going to have some clever sort of gearing systems in the generators to make sure that even though the weight is falling down slowly, the generator is spinning much faster. So I think at the component level, certainly our systems are quite well understood. We know we have a cost down challenge, as all these technologies do, and we're going to have to bring our cost down, and we fully expect to be able to significantly reduce our costs between, say, commercial deployment number 1 and number 5, and it will be an ongoing process, as it always is.
Okay, great. There are a couple of questions which have come on WhatsApp, which are based on my presentation. So question is, I talked about the ACC manufacturing program. So is the Indian government only looking at supporting battery technology? So again, as I mentioned, that battery technology is right now given a priority under the Gigafactory manufacturing, because that is something which is being used both for e-mobility as well as stationary. But no, it is not the only technology which will be supported. In fact, the National Energy Storage Mission, which was developed by Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, had included support for all forms of storage technologies. It's just that since this mission was driven by Niti Aayog with focus on e-mobility, that is limited to battery technologies, but we do expect if there are enough technologies which are ready to set up manufacturing in India, then MNRE and other ministries are very much open for looking at alternate options. Specifically, I think on hydrogen, as I mentioned in my presentation, there is already a national hydrogen mission which is currently in works, where India Energy Storage Alliance is a key stakeholder providing inputs, and that mission is expected to focus on manufacturing of electrolyzers in India, and similarly other technologies may be taken up if there is a sufficient interest in setting up manufacturing in India. So I think that's all the questions which I have received in chat or WhatsApp. Robin, do you have any questions which I can answer, or otherwise we can wrap up or hand it back to the organizers?
No, I don't have any questions other than to say, Rahul, it was great to listen to your presentation, and I would very much like to keep in touch. And we do feel as if there's a lot to add to the Indian market, and we see it as an exciting place to be working. So very much look forward to speaking with you again and keeping up the dialogue.
Sure. Thanks, Robin. I'm not sure if organizers will be sharing all the presentations, but otherwise, Robin, I have put my email ID in chat. If any of the other audience members, if you want to get a copy of the presentation, you can write to Robin as well. And yeah, Robin, look forward to exciting times. I think this decade is going to be the decade for energy storage technologies, and it's really heartening to see. I have been working on this field for now more than 15 years, and just the pace of innovation and the opportunities are keep on just expanding exponentially. So this is really exciting time. If you are already interested in this area, then that's great. But if you're just curious and just trying to think about it, I think take my word for it. I think this coming decade is going to be a decade for storage technologies. And if you're looking for switching from any adjacent sectors and get into energy storage area, I think this is a great time to be part of the storage industry. So once again, I would like to thank Terry and organizers for giving us time for this important discussion on alternative energy storage technologies. And I would like to thank Robin for taking time and coming in and sharing about this exciting new technology. All the best, Robin, and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.